That bottle of Château d'Yquem costs more than your car, Aunt Victoria hissed, snatching the wine from my hand at her restaurant's 10-year anniversary party. Service staff shouldn't even breathe near the reserve collection. But I wasn't service staff, I was the owner of the vineyard whose name was etched on every bottle in her cellar. The Crystal Room at Victoria's, San Francisco's most exclusive French restaurant, sparkled with candlelight and ego. My aunt had invited the city's elite to celebrate her decade of culinary dominance, and I'd made the mistake of arriving early, dressed in my usual vineyard work clothes, jeans, boots, and a flannel shirt that had seen better days. "Sophie, darling, stick to the house water," Uncle Jeffrey added with his signature condescending smile. "That's 2001 vintage. $3,000 a bottle. We can't have family treating this like a backyard barbecue." I released the bottle carefully, watching my aunt cradle it like an infant. The irony was sharp enough to cut. She was protecting my wine from me, guarding the very grapes I'd harvested with my own hands. "Of course," I said quietly. "I'll be more careful." "Careful?" Victoria's laugh tinkled like breaking crystal. "Sweetheart, you shouldn't even be back here. The wine cellar is for sommeliers and paying guests only. Family or not, standards must be maintained." The private cellar was a temperature-controlled monument to pretension, housing wines worth more than most people's homes. I recognized every label, should have, considering I'd personally selected half of them for her over the years, though she'd never known it. "I was just admiring your collection," I said. "Admiring?" Jeffrey scoffed. "What could you possibly know about fine wine? Didn't you drop out of UC Davis to play in dirt?" "I graduated, actually. Viticulture and enology." "Right, the farming degree," Victoria said dismissively. "Well, your little hobby certainly hasn't provided wine knowledge. The Château d'Yquem you were fondling is one of the world's most prestigious sauternes. From Bordeaux. You probably think it's from Napa." I bit my tongue. The 2001 d'Yquem was indeed from Bordeaux, but the bottle she held so reverently was corked. I could smell the taint from here. $30,000 of spoiled wine that she served to some unsuspecting tech billionaire who pretend it tasted like heaven. "Why don't you go help in the kitchen?" Victoria suggested. "I'm sure they could use an extra hand with dishes. It would be more appropriate than mingling with the guests." "The guests haven't arrived yet." "Precisely. And when they do, I'd prefer you remain scarce. The mayor is coming, along with the Hearsts and several tech CEOs. This isn't your crowd, Sophie." My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Chen, my head sommelier. 3 cases of the Phantom Creek Cabernet just arrived for tonight. Should I announce your ownership during the wine presentation? I typed back, "No. Let it play out." Victoria noticed my phone. "Oh good, calling an Uber?" "Smart choice. You can slip out before, Victoria." A voice called from the doorway. James Morrison, her sommelier, appeared looking frantic. "We have a situation." "What kind of situation?" Her voice went sharp. "The wine. For tonight's centerpiece auction. The 1947 Château Phantom Creek. There's been a mistake." I kept my expression neutral. Phantom Creek was my vineyard, though I'd kept the ownership structure carefully obscured. The 1947 was the birth year vintage, one of only 12 bottles left in existence. "What mistake?" Victoria's face was turning an interesting shade of purple. "The authentication papers. They're not with the bottle. Without them, we can't verify." "Of course we can verify it." Victoria snapped. "I purchased it through the most reputable broker in California. For $150,000, Jeffrey added. "It better be authentic." James swallowed hard. "The auction house requires documentation. It's their policy. Without it, then get the documentation." Victoria's voice could have etched glass. "I've tried. The vineyard isn't responding. Château Phantom Creek is notoriously secretive about ownership. Some say it's owned by a Chinese billionaire, others think it's a Saudi prince. I don't care if it's owned by Santa Claus." Victoria was practically vibrating. "That wine is the centerpiece of tonight's charity auction. The hospital expects to raise at least $300,000 from that bottle alone." I studied my boots. The 1947 wasn't just authentic, it was from my private collection. I donated it anonymously for the charity auction, knowing Victoria would claim credit for procuring it. "Maybe," I said quietly, "I could help." Victoria whirled on me. "You? How could you possibly?" "I know someone at Phantom Creek." The silence was deafening. James looked at me with desperate hope. Victoria's expression mixed skepticism with desperate need. "You know someone at the most exclusive winery in Napa?" Jeffrey's tone suggested I'd claimed to know the Pope. "We've done business." Victoria's laugh was sharp. "What business could you possibly have with Phantom Creek? Their waiting list is 15 years long. Presidents can't get allocations." "I helped with their harvest a few years back," I said truthfully. "Every harvest, actually, since I was 16. Physical labor, Jeffrey muttered. Of course. Can you get the authentication? James asked urgently. Give me 10 minutes. I stepped out onto the terrace, dialing my assistant. Elena, I need you to send the authentication papers for the 47 to Victoria's restaurant. The ones with the corporate seal, not my personal signature. The anonymous donation? Sure thing. Want me to include the full provenance? Everything. But keep my name off it. You know she's going to take credit for this donation, right? The press release already mentions her extensive connections procuring this rare vintage. I know. Sophie, you've supplied that woman's entire wine program for 5 years. She insults you to your face while profiting from your wine. When are you going to? Tonight, I said quietly. Send the papers. Back inside, Victoria paced the cellar like a caged leopard. Well? Documentation will arrive in 5 minutes. How did you? She stopped herself, probably realizing she didn't care how the magic happened as long as it did. Her phone chimed. Email received. James pulled it up on his tablet, eyes widening as he read. This is incredibly detailed. Chain of custody from 1947 to present. Every owner, every storage facility, every temperature variation. This is museum-quality documentation. Of course it is, Victoria said smoothly, as if she'd arranged it herself. I only work with the best. There's more, James continued. A letter from the vineyard owner personally guaranteeing authenticity and, oh my. What? They're donating 3 additional bottles for the auction. The 1982, 1995, and 2018 vintages. Combined value approximately $200,000. Victoria's eyes lit up with greed and false generosity. How wonderful. My connections really came through. Your connections? I couldn't help myself. She waved dismissively. The wine world is small, Sophie. When you've been at my level as long as I have, doors open. Speaking of which, shouldn't you be heading to the kitchen? Before I could respond, the cellar door burst open. Marcus Chin appeared, managing to look professionally urgent. Mrs. Beaumont, we need you upstairs. The mayor arrived early, and there's been a mix-up with tonight's wine pairings. What kind of mix-up? Victoria's voice could have frozen champagne. The specialized pairing for his table. He's brought the governor as a surprise guest. We need to adjust the entire wine service. Victoria looked ready to combust. The wine pairings were set weeks ago. Yes, ma'am, but the governor has specific preferences. He's particularly interested in Phantom Creek wines. Apparently, he's been trying to get an allocation for years. I watched Victoria's face cycle through panic, calculation, and false confidence. Of course. I'll handle it personally. Actually, Marcus continued, he specifically asked if the vineyard owner might be attending tonight. He'd love to discuss the sustainable farming practices Phantom Creek pioneered. The owner is very private, Victoria said quickly. Never does public events. Shame, Jeffrey added. Though between us, I've heard he's rather eccentric. Probably some tech bro who bought a vineyard for the tax write-off. Marcus's expression didn't change, but I caught the slight eye twitch. He'd worked at Phantom Creek for 3 years before I promoted him to head sommelier. He knew exactly who owned it. Shall I create a special tasting menu featuring the Phantom Creek collection? He asked Victoria. Yes, but, she glanced at her phone. The wholesale cost alone would be astronomical. Perhaps, I said mildly, your connection could arrange a discount. For charity. Victoria's smile was all teeth. I don't need suggestions from someone who can't tell Burgundy from Beaujolais. Actually, Marcus interjected, that's not a bad idea. The owner has been known to support charitable causes generously. Fine, Victoria snapped. Sophie, since you claim to have connections, make yourself useful. Call your harvest friend. See if they can arrange a conversation with someone who matters. I pulled out my phone again, making a show of scrolling through contacts. What exactly do you need? A case each of the 2018 and 2019 Cabernet. The 2020 Pinot. 3 bottles of the Reserve Chardonnay. At cost, for charity. That's about $50,000 worth of wine at retail, I noted. Hence why I need them at cost, Victoria said impatiently. The hospital fundraiser is important, but I'm not made of money. The irony of her pleading poverty while wearing a $30,000 watch wasn't lost on me. I pretended to make a call, then covered the phone. They want to know who's making the request. Victoria Beaumont, of Victoria's. Surely they know who I am. I relayed the message to my imaginary contact, waited a beat. They're asking about your account history. Account history? Victoria went pale. We order through distributors. Because Phantom Creek didn't use distributors. Every sale was direct, every client personally vetted. Victoria had been trying to get an allocation for a decade, consistently rejected for reasons she'd never understood. They're pulling records, I said, maintaining the charade. Interesting. They show significant purchase history but not under your name. Under S. Beaumont? Victoria's face went from pale to red. That must be a mistake. Some system error. But I could see the wheels turning. S. Beaumont. Sophie Beaumont. Her niece who played in dirt. They're approving the request, I continued. But they want to know if S. Beaumont will be attending tonight. Apparently, she's listed as a Founding Circle member. The cellar went silent except for the hum of climate control. Founding Circle? James whispered. Those are the original investors. There are only 5 in existence. 6, I corrected. Though one prefers to remain anonymous. Victoria stared at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. The flannel shirt. The dirty boots. The calloused hands that had touched her precious wine. You're S. Beaumont, she said flatly. Sophie Marie Beaumont. Viticulture degree from UC Davis. Owner of Phantom Creek Vineyard since I turned 21. Your exclusive wine supplier for the past 5 years, though you never knew it. Jeffrey's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. That's impossible. Phantom Creek is worth approximately $400 million at current valuation. Yes, Uncle Jeffrey, I'm aware. Turns out playing in dirt can be quite profitable. The allocation list, Victoria said faintly. I've been on it for 10 years. No, I said gently. You've been rejected for 10 years. But I made sure you got our wines through shell companies because despite everything, your family, every bottle you've served, every vintage you've bragged about knowing, they all came from me. Marcus stepped forward, no longer pretending. Would you like me to update tonight's programs, Ms. Beaumont? To reflect Phantom Creek's generous donation? That won't be necessary, I said. Let Victoria take the credit. She always does anyway. Sophie, Victoria's voice was strangled. I just spent 20 minutes explaining to you that I shouldn't touch the expensive wine. That I don't belong here. That I should wash dishes in the kitchen. I smiled sadly. I heard you, Aunt Victoria. I've heard you for years. James was frantically pulling up information on his tablet. You're the S.M. Beaumont who wrote Terroir and Climate Change? The definitive work on sustainable viticulture. Guilty. And the anonymous donor who funded UC Davis's new enology lab. Also guilty. And the owner of Black Oak, Riverside Estates, and Golden Hill Vineyards? It's been a good decade. Victoria sank onto a wine crate, her perfect composure finally cracking. You own half of Napa. Closer to a third. But yes, I've done well. All these years, Jeffrey said slowly, you've been sitting at our table, listening to us mock your little hobby. While drinking my wine, yes. The 2015 Phantom Creek Reserve you called Transcendent last Thanksgiving? I picked those grapes myself. Why? Victoria asked. Why hide it? Why let us treat me like garbage? I finished. Because I wanted to know if you'd love me without the money. If you'd be proud of me without the prestige. Turns out, the answer was no. That's not, we didn't, she stopped, unable to finish the lie. The governor will be here soon, I said, checking my watch. You should prepare for your guests. Sophie, wait. Victoria stood, unsteady. The wine for tonight. Will you still, of course. Everything you asked for will be delivered within the hour. At cost, as requested. Consider it my gift to the hospital. Your gift, she repeated dully. Though you'll present it as yours. Like always. I headed for the door, pausing to add, oh, and Aunt Victoria? That 47 you're auctioning? Might want to check the bottom of the authentication papers. There's a personal note from the owner. I left them scrambling for the documentation, taking the stairs 2 at a time. In the main dining room, staff buzzed with final preparations. Marcus caught up with me near the entrance. That was quite the performance, he said quietly. Not a performance. Just overdue honesty. Are you really going to let her take credit for the donation? What matters more, who gets credit or that the hospital gets funding? He smiled. Spoken like someone who actually understands wine. It's not about the label. It's about what's inside. Exactly. The governor really is asking about you, by the way. He's been trying to meet Phantom Creek's owner for 3 years. Then I suppose I should change. I gestured at my work clothes. Can't meet the governor looking like someone who plays in dirt. I don't know, Marcus said. Seems to me that's exactly how you should meet him. As yourself. The woman who built an empire from soil and sunshine. Back in the cellar, I knew Victoria would be reading my note, for Aunt Victoria, may you someday value the hands that pour the wine as much as the wine itself. With love despite everything, Sophie. My phone buzzed. Victoria, please don't leave. We need to talk. Then Jeffrey, I'm an ass. An pretentious, judgmental ass. Then James, is the mentorship program at Phantom Creek accepting applications? I silenced the phone and walked to my truck, a beat-up Ford that had hauled more grape bins than I could count. The valet looked confused when I handed him the keys to a vehicle worth less than the wine being poured inside. "Nice truck," he said, surprising me. 1995? 1994, you know trucks? My dad restored one just like it. Said they don't make them like this anymore. No, I agreed. They don't. I tipped him $100, earning a shocked smile. As I waited, I could see through the restaurant's windows. Victoria, holding court, gesturing with the wine bottle she'd protected from me. The mayor arriving, greeting her warmly. The first guests filtering in, ready to bid astronomical sums on wine I'd grown. My truck arrived, and I climbed in, starting the engine that coughed before purring. Tomorrow, the wine world would buzz with news of Phantom Creek's generous donation. Victoria would graciously accept praise for her connections. The hospital would receive its funding. And I'd be back in my vineyard, hands in the dirt, growing the next vintage that my family would drink while wondering why I couldn't make something of myself. But tonight had shifted something. The truth was out there now, floating like tannins in a young wine. It would settle eventually, changing the flavor of every family gathering to come. My phone lit up with one final message. A photo from Marcus, the governor, raising a glass of my 2018 reserve, toasting the mysterious genius behind Phantom Creek, wherever they are. I smiled and drove home to my vines, leaving behind a restaurant full of people who finally learned that sometimes the most valuable things come from those they value least. The dirt under my fingernails had built an empire. Let them swallow that truth with their expensive wine.